Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of the Franchising 360 show. I am Tim Parmeter, and with me, as always, is Danielle Wright.
Hello.
Every Friday night, folks, we are going to take a 360-degree look at the franchising industry. Franchising is typically not at all what people think it is, and we're going to educate you on things like, should you even own a franchise? And if so, how do you know which is the best fit for you? Once you are an owner, we're going to talk about strategies to help you grow and succeed. And we can show you how to take that existing business you have and turn it into a national or perhaps even international franchise brand. Now, Danielle has been in the industry for over 15 years, primarily on the franchisor side as director of development, all the way up to chief development officer. And now she consults for numerous brands on how to effectively grow. I am the founder and CEO of FranCoach and have been doing this for over 10 years. Our team at FranCoach works with individuals who want to become a franchise owner, and our job is to help determine what they're looking for and match them with the best franchise to own. The consistent thing I think we both focus on is properly educating people on franchising, and that is what we hope to do with this show. So how are we feeling about educating some people up tonight?
I'm in it to win it.
We have talked numerous times on this show, and we always seem to reference a few franchises over and over, because one of the things when people don't know anything, hey, franchisee, name a franchise, what do they start rattling off?
Oh, goodness. My son just did this the other day. We were looking through a magazine of something of that nature, and he's like, names a franchise. I'm like, yep, know that one. Names a franchise, know that one. He's like, is there a franchise you don't know? I don't know. Test me. So his little butt pulls up his chat GPT and does and starts naming. Yep. Know it. He finally gave me one.
Oh, wow.
That I didn't know. And guess what? Guess what it was?
What was it?
It was food.
Which I was going to say.
That was a story I haven't told you yet. So that was a genuine response.
there you go. And food is the one most people think
about. Right. And we've referenced it here.
Right. And for
a lot.
As much as we can talk about, oh my gosh, there's so much more than food. Yeah. There is really a lot of things out there that are food driven.
Right. Well, because it's back to the home service stuff and the repair stuff and all of those things. It's a need. You need it to kind of, live.
I know. And I'm really hungry right now. So we're going to do an episode about food. Might not be the best thing, but
food has a lot of different, I use the word verticals because food is not one size fits all. It's there's a lot of different types of food, and there's lots of different types of business ownership opportunity with a food focus.
Yeah. I think that's one of the many fun aspects of franchising.
Look at us with the F's, with the food fun franchise.
On a Friday.
Oh, yay.
Yay. So is how many different things there really are, even if you're like, oh, I'd like something food. Okay, well, I got to ask you 50 questions to narrow that down.
And you don't necessarily, I think at FranCoach, right? You have food brands, but a lot of times you dissuade people from food.
It's and maybe
it's the sexy, not sexy.
Maybe a little bit. I think people have a very strong reaction one way or the other.
Yes.
It's either when we always talk about, as we build it out, some industries and hey, what's something that you don't want any part of? Food, right? So many people. And then the reverse is.
But then the reverse, yep.
It's extreme. It's either I really want food or I really don't.
Well, because you think about from a food perspective, you're a consumer, right? So you lead with a consumer brain. What is it that you go to? The one, the only franchise that everyone asks about is.
Oh. I was going to say McDonald's, but it's probably Chick-fil-A.
Oh, bing, bing, bing. Tell him what he is one.
Chick-fil-A, which isn't really a franchise. But it's they're because
we're a consumer and we sit in a very long dual drive-through line for a piece of chicken.
Or there's a well-known brand that's not actually a franchise that people think of, but has coffee lines, right? And then there's one that is a franchise.
Pseudo, yeah.
It is, right, from a Dunkin' standpoint, that is.
Burger. What burger brand is not a franchise?
We talked about this before. There's almost 50 different...
Over 50.
...franchises just that have
Burger
burgers.
is their primary food offering. We're not talking about all the other stuff that comes with a burger, but over 50 franchise brands, that burger is their number one. Now, it doesn't mean that this is where you're getting excited on my end. Like, you got food. It's not just food. You've got fast casual. You've got QSR. Oh, letters. We love letters and acronyms, right? And then you've got, fine dining. Like, there's a fine dining franchise for burgers. Like, what does that mean? It means I sit down and someone feeds me like a course of meals tied to a burger. Like, super excited.
Maybe
Sorry.
Bottomless fries.
We must be hungry.
very, very definitely. And so, though it's the category I think most people think of right off the bat with franchising is food. But there are so many different kind of niches in there so it's almost like having an org chart, right? Here's food, and then let's draw all the little lines. Go back to the
entrepreneur episode that you had, right? What was the number one brand in Entrepreneur 500?
Taco Bell. Like 5 years in a row.
Food.
Right?
But what is Taco Bell? It's QSR.
Right.
What is QSR? Quick service.
So let's talk more about the different kind of niches, and then some things maybe even people don't think of, but also some of those owner traits and a whole bunch more. That's coming up next on the Franchising 360 show. And we are back on the Franchising 360 show. And if you started watching the show tonight and you have not eaten, my guess is you are about to run to the...
Especially on the Pacific time zone, right? Like, it's 5:00. Let's eat.
Right.
We're going to give you some great ideas.
Great ideas, or you're going to have buyer's remorse.
Or you're going to have lots of more questions, which then you're going to ask us about.
So many things. We're talking about food as an overall industry, but so many different niches in there. The big ones we think about, talk about some of the other maybe aspects of food or the industry that maybe people aren't thinking about.
Well, I think, let's we talked Taco Bell, and you got Subway, you got McDonald's, but there's the classification in which those food brands fall under. So it's the type of food they offer, sandwiches, burgers, fries, there's dessert, there's
pizza, there's
coffee, there's pizza, like all of that falls under food.
All the things you think about, I'm going to go have a meal, and they're probably in a strip mall.
Correct. Like what's Panda Express? Franchise. Chinese food. There you go. Right. Like it touches every aspect.
And so then you kind of started to go down this path. Like, there's the things that are a little bit smaller, but still we're consuming.
They're still considered
something.
Food. Yep.
Like the coffees, but you can also
desserts and ice cream, and what else is out there?
Well, and then you get into some of the things that are healthier. Right. So,
the acai bowls.
Yes. Which, probably 10 years ago, if I'd have seen that word, I'm like, what the heck did they scribble something on top of the letters? Right. Because it's spelled funny.
What do we talk about the fruit stuff? Like, what's the edible arrangement?
Right.
That falls under food.
Right.
Even though you're not really eating it in the edible arrangement.
We had a franchise represented here a few months ago on your birthday that we had
the bundt cake.
Nothing but bundt
again,
cake.
Dessert.
Right. But the juices, more healthier food.
Yeah, forget about them too. The smoothies.
Smoothies.
Yep.
Right.
All the things.
So all of the different things, but they're going to attract different customers, but also could potentially attract different owners. Would that be how would you, as you started thinking of those, take the financial out of the equation, right? Because you could say, like, man, I'd love to own a Taco Bell. Okay, well, do you have $3 million?
Well, it's not always $3 million, right? Like, that's the misconception,
Like the high end of that, right?
Well, and a lot of times when you look it up, like if anybody from watching right now all of a sudden starts Google away, or Chat GPT it away, like it's not as expensive to own one, but a lot of those brands won't let you just come in and say, I only want to own one. Now, when we mentioned Chick-fil-A, it's not a true franchise model. That's a story for another day.
Right.
They have a real limitation to that. You can only have one.
Right.
Like, you can't manage more than one Chick-fil-A operation, to the point that the volume that a Chick-fil-A does and their program doesn't make it really sustainable from an infrastructure perspective.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and you're not owning, you're managing it. But when you look at those, and I think the other thing that's sometimes misleading from a food standpoint on the investment is, and we had this not too long ago, like you'll see ranges of what the investments are, right?
Yep.
And so there was a list I saw not too long ago, top franchises under $100,000. Cool. Well, a really, really, really big coffee franchise was on there.
Oh, okay.
Right? Not a chance in HE double hockey sticks.
Yep.
That is under $100,000.
Right.
But
the franchise fee is.
It's
a misconception. So
right.
for the viewers, you look at that stuff. If they say those things, it's generally what is the franchise fee, and that's what gets you into the franchise. They're not calculating the build out or the inventory or the hiring.
A whole bunch. And then that one was actually because they have alternate locations, right? Maybe you're a Dunkin' in a gas station.
Subway's key for that, right? Like they're in gas stations, they're in Walmarts, they're outside parcels.
And you can't just own
They're dual branded. Like what's the dual brand situation? Right. Like I used to work for a burger franchise, and we were dual branded within Annie Ann's Pretzel. Yep. Don't think about Annie Ann's being a franchise. It most certainly is. Cinnabon. Cinnabon's a franchise.
Cinnabon's all over.
This is so fun.
You see Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins together,
but
KFC
but those are under their parent company. That's how that is. With the Annie Ann's and the others, they're not tied in any other way, except they have allowed for you to use a space and put both brands. So for an owner, you get to maximize your revenue potential in what we call a captured audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are all different kind of facets of this. I want to make sure we come back to the owner a little bit. And I
think we also want to talk about some of the not so great things about food. Like I'm all excited over here, but there's some things to be considered there.
And really, again, it always comes back to there's not a best franchise to own.
There is the best one for you.
Yes. And again, even if you're like, hey, I love food. Everybody has to eat. So many different nuances and things to think about. So we're going to come back, hit up a couple more of those on the other side of this break here on the Franchising 360 show. Hey, we are back on the Franchising 360 show talking about food and food franchises and all the different niches and stuff. In franchising, we've discussed this across the board, right? You don't typically need industry experience to be an owner
in different verticals. Yep.
Right. Most of the time. What about food? Is that any difference? I know you like sometimes it can be a thing with some of the bigger ones, right?
I in my experience with the brands I have worked with, we do want people with restaurant operations experience because it's a lot to manage. Yeah. So even if you think some of the smaller quick service restaurants that have, when I say smaller, their footprint of a retail space is small, right? It's just the staff. People are eating outside of it or coming and getting it and going. And so you have to have at any one point up to 40 people on your payroll because you're running a shift of 6 people. You have 3 day parts and someone calls out and can't, it's a lot of people to run. That's why if we talk numbers, the margins are generally low in food because you've got waste, you've got to buy food, you've got paper products. There are just so many facets to operating that business. If you come in and I'm talking how much food I only know this because I've worked with food, but prior to that, I would have had no clue that you have to order this much stuff and then you have time that you have to throw it out. You may cook it and it can only sit somewhere for a period of time because there's food safety regulations. So having some understanding of the operations of a restaurant, maybe even you just were wait staff at one point, maybe you were a busser at some point. Those are things that can kind of build your acumen. I wouldn't necessarily throw you into the deep end, but a lot of things too, when you're looking at some of those franchises, I don't need you to have that experience because it's not as technical as that, right? Some of the dessert stuff, can you scoop some ice cream?
Right.
Can you edible cookie dough? Right. We could talk about that. I need to know how to make it.
Right.
I need to know how to serve it. But
or maybe staff of 3 or 4 or 5 on a shift versus
high schoolers, college people, right?
Do you think that factors into as somebody with experience of, hey, I've been used to working with maybe more unskilled, or I like that, or I like working with a younger staff?
Yeah, I think that's something that plays into it. This is where I really challenge people to say, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal, right? What's your big BHAG?
Right.
If you want to own 5 Taco Bells, let's maybe start here with something that has some labor that you can manage, and you build 4 or 5 locations in that vertical, and then you graduate to something else. There is a franchisee that he is the largest, as in makes the most money. He is $1 billion franchisee, and you just sit with that for a minute. And his family started in Burger King back in the day. His dad was big in that franchise, and they no longer have that. But now he has over 10 brands and thousands of restaurants. And it's like he has done it. It's possible, but he didn't start that way. He started with one and then built into others. But he had still family background in the industry. Yeah,
and I feel like when you think of long-term goals, and again, it's okay to look at, hey, one of these is going to provide me everything that I want. Right. And I always want people to understand sometimes one is perfectly enough.
Plenty.
But I feel like in food, there's more like when somebody gets started and they're doing a good job, it's easy for them to kind of pick up other locations either around or even sometimes farther away.
That's a lot of a strategy. There have been quite a few franchise owners I've worked in the past that was they wanted an entry point into a brand that was sold out. So what's the easiest way to do that? Acquire someone else's And there's this big thing now, right? Like the baby boomers that have owned businesses are looking to get out. And so there's this huge influx of opportunity to buy an existing business. Okay, well, this is a way to get into a franchise that may not have availability in your market for something new. And then you become that specialty person within the brand, and the brand reaches out to you like, hey, I have this franchisee that wants to exit, or this franchisee that it's a different growth trajectory, and they may not be all in the same market, but it's definitely a path to take.
Because if you're a good operator of any franchise, that franchise system would be happy with you taking on, taking on more because you're a proven entity.
You're a proven entity, and let's be clear, it's easy for everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think there are times
we're smart, not hard.
We'll get people that are like, oh, I'd really like a resale. Okay, well, good for you. That is possible. But a lot of times, franchises that are going to come up for sale, if it's a decently run business or better, it's probably getting acquired by somebody already in the brand
that's going to, before it even becomes public
and
knowledge.
For whatever reason, I think in food that tends to happen more.
Yes.
Again, just because not everybody can handle those bigger operations.
So that goes back to your question about like who's the owner and what do they look for, and those and a lot of those brands, they're looking for people with operations experience, what we call multi-unit, multi-brand owners, because then they have a plug and play infrastructure. And from we've talked about the positives and the things, but there are negatives to it, right? And I've labeled some of those, like the expenses, the labor, like there are just a lot of things you have to consider. Like it may seem shiny and pretty, but you can get shiny and pretty with a lot of things, as we've talked about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are a couple other things that, again, like it's not all rainbows and unicorns. So
really, I love some rainbows and unicorns.
I know, but it's not all. But we're going to come back and talk about a couple more things about the food industry. Things to kind of think about to see if it might be the right thing for you. That's next on the Franchising 360 show. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back here to the Franchising 360 show. We are talking about the one industry everybody thinks of when it comes to franchising, food. We've talked about all the different kind of niches and things to think about and what might make a good owner for this. But, and again, I know you hate it when I say this, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, Danielle.
Yeah.
When you think
we just left the other segment saying that.
When you think about owning a franchise anywhere in the food niche, right? What are some things you're like, hey, maybe this isn't for you because of blank?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I go back to labor. It is like we've talked before, franchising is a people business. No matter what you're going to get into, you're going to have to deal with Joe Public. That's something to consider. If you don't want to be the person on the TikTok videos where they're throwing the food back at the person, probably not a good idea to own that. Some things to think about from a food perspective is don't necessarily go in saying, hey, I eat here every day. You will stop eating there every day.
or I don't like this item on that thing. Okay, well, somebody else might.
Yeah, right. And it goes back to the need, like we talk in home service.
You can't love you don't necessarily always have to love. I had a guy years ago owned a pizza franchise, and he's like, I don't eat pizza. Which one? How do you not eat pizza? But
that's a story for another day.
But he was like, it's okay that I don't. He goes, I know like almost everybody else does.
Yeah.
And you've talked about this before, but from a standpoint of like, this isn't a quick launching business.
Well, and we were talking in the break that like, what's the con? And I'm like, I don't know that there is a con. There negative is totally up to the person. Like,
Right.
do you think that's a negative?
Right.
The reality is it is not something that you can, in some of the brands we've talked to, some of the guests we've had, there's a quick, what we call ramp up to profitability, like where you're making $1 for every dollar you put in. Restaurant has a slow burn in the beginning. So if you're not risk adverse, then guess what? Go in and you're going to build this for 3 years and you may not make a single dollar in the first 3 years.
You may not even be open for the first year. From signing to open, it may take.
That's a whole separate conversation. But from the time you open those doors and you're offering that product, it may take you 3 years to get there. But like we were discussing on the break, it's there forever. Like you're signing 10-year agreements with these brands. And so if the first 3 years are hit or miss and you're trying to figure it out, but you're trying to also build your clientele, kind of why people gravitate to the Taco Bells or the Subways or the McDonald's, because there's brand recognition, but they're also expensive investments and require you to open multiple locations. But if you get in some of these starter brands, okay, ride the wave. But once it hits, it's there for the long term.
We're not going to all of a sudden stop eating.
Correct. So it's not a con or a pro. It's just a reality that one has to say, am I good burning through cash to get to the place that I need to be? But once I'm there, you're set. Where some of these other businesses have a great kick and then you're going to fall and then you're gradually building its back up.
Or it may not have as the top line potential, as some of these things do. And So I think
it's that revenue is vanity, right? Profit's sanity and cash is king. Like that's the metric you have to think about with food. And
I think that exit strategy down the road, we probably can do a whole episode on exit strategy and selling and all of those things. But I mean, you're going to have a long history of, like, again, people are going to eat. Everything is right there. Those can be good businesses to really sell.
It's fun for us to have this dialogue, and I get really giddy about it because in franchising, they're the consultants and the people that help people find businesses, and most everybody's nose turns up to food, and a lot of people are intrigued by it, but we don't do enough education to how it can work. And if you put the right guardrails in place, you start with something that may not necessarily oh my gosh, I want a McDonald's. Great. But work your way to get there. Like McDonald's owners didn't become McDonald's owners overnight. Yeah.
Well, and real fast, we had clients a few years ago at one point owned 50 Taco Bells, but their very first business was carpet cleaning and built it up. Right. And so we want to make sure also, we've talked a little bit about this. Let's get some food related guests.
I know.
We've got next week. We've got one is like really on the front end of brand new. Even talk about her journey into becoming.
And she's not she has a standard franchise model, but she has alternative models, which is really important.
We love that as well. And then the following week, we've got a much bigger, well established brand to be able to come on and
we're gonna have some fun with food.
So fun with food. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Franchising 360
Maybe
show.
we'll get lucky and they'll bring in some samples.
I know. I'm hoping for that.
Amazing. But until then, feel free to check us out on our YouTube channel, frankcoach.net. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more. And until next Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, that is Danielle Wright.
And that's Tim Parmeter.
We will see you next week here on BizTV on the Franchising 360 show.